Charity Gaming Guild proudly brings to you
Charity Gaming Guild presents
The Charity Gaming Guild presents
the
Nat
Pun
Pun
Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to your community episode. Today I've got with me, as always, Josh,
Hello.
Andy,
Buenos dias.
and John.
Hello.
And today we are going to be covering those three other P's of the 6 P's for making a successful and incredible GM. So the 3 P's we're going to be covering today are players, patience, and purpose. It's purpose, not porpoise. So first P for today is players. Some interesting and important topics when it comes to prepping with your players is communicating before and after the game. The few different things that I feel this covers is obviously getting ready, so prepping them for what characters they should be doing, levels, if they need a backup character, very important if you're planning to kill them, giving them guidance on any kind of equipment and things like that, and so making sure that they've got access if it's an online system. How do you guys deal with when it comes to people providing you with sheets? Because I imagine it probably comes in a lot of different ways. Do you have a preferred method for that?
D&D Beyond is incredibly helpful because you can create a campaign in D&D Beyond which then content shares what you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got access to all of the player options on D&D Beyond, and when I start a new campaign, and actually we're kind of going through this at the moment on Tuesday nights, we're not now finishing, but we're going to be finishing a campaign and starting a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So I will create that online campaign and ask players to create their character there, so I have immediate access to their character. But the kind of sell to them is you'll also have access to all of the options because I already paid for it. So that works really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But if a player still wants to submit like a proper sheet, then they can. It's absolutely fine. It just takes a bit longer to check.
How easy, when it's not been done through D&D Beyond, or even sometimes when it is, would you say it is to check through those sheets and to find where there may be errors or things slightly askew? What would you say you'd look out for?
So when I've had sheets sent to me and I've reviewed them, I tend to do some basic checks. So basically, I check like proficiency bonus is right, AC looks about right, levels right, HP, that sort of stuff. The things that we're, especially like for our big games where we send out the players pack, things like have they done HP as average HP or max HP, what did we say, those kind of checks. Make sure they've chosen some spells and they filled in. Honestly, without going to D&D Beyond or getting the books out and going, right, you're level 10, so how many spells should you have, Mr. Wizard? It's like, I assume they've built, especially with the D&D Beyond sheet, they've kind of got a lot of help, a lot of framework, a lot of hand-holding. So then just check equipment. A lot of the time, especially for the like the one-shot games we do, it doesn't matter if they've still got 700 gold and they haven't taken out their gold. A lot of the time we're going to spend it, sort of thing. For the campaigns that I ran, I spent a bit more time checking over the sheets, but they were starting at level 1, so it was a lot easier. So there's less to check.
Equipment's the big one to check because players will have this, like we've spoken about in our previous Fireside episode last week. Players might have this concept in their mind of what they want their character to be, and that might mean they need to start with a breastplate.
Mm-hmm.
Or breastplates are expensive, so can they actually afford a breastplate, or have they just had everything on the slide? Those kinds of little things are important to look out for if you're not aware of them as a DM. And HP, like John has just said, is one that I check every single time, but mostly because players do themselves out of hit points.
Right, okay.
And I think one of the things you've got to be careful about the character generators. So the one on D&D Beyond, I think I created a fighter and it automatically gave it full plate armour and things like that at level 6, 7, something. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen a character with full plate armour. It's too expensive.
Unless you're playing the Dragon Guard, they start with full plate armour in the starting gear.
Interesting.
I was going to say, would you ever consider that there might be a way to kind of reason it out by a person's backstory. If they put a bit of effort in and say like, oh, it's maybe not as good as, so you have like a lower AC, but it's passed down by your family kind of thing. Is there ways to work around it like that?
100%. But so even when you spot something wrong with the character, you don't just change it. There's a conversation with that person. It's like, oh, you know, I've seen this. What's that about? Is there something that you need to help with your backstory? Is there something that you particularly wanted? And it becomes a conversation. If you're not a teacher, you're not saying tick, 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 cross 9 out of 10. You're building their character to be balanced within your game. So that conversation is incredibly important, and that's one way you can do it, is lowering the quality of something or something like that.
I think you've got to be mindful of your other players as well, though, with that. You're going to give somebody a +1 longsword and a full suit of plate armour because there's a family heirloom. What the rest of your players going to get to balance that out? Mm-hmm. It's okay if everyone starts with a +1 weapon and something equivalent to a suit of armour. That's cool. You can plan for that. You just make your encounters a bit more difficult than the rest of it. But can't show one player favouritism.
Nice. And then when it comes to online tabletop services, are there any that you use, you recommend, or you've had experiences with?
Roll20, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Roll20 is the normal one we use in the charity, isn't it?
I think Andy has quite a few that you've used before, like Foundry, I think is one. And
Foundry's one. I mean, that's more for running the game rather than supporting the characters.
Yeah.
Their players with. I mean, I like Foundry. It is pricey. It is quite demanding of your laptop as well. So if you've got a really low-end laptop, players will struggle with it. And if I'm honest, I have let my subscription lapse for that. Probably going to go and use Roll20 for any games I'll play in the future. It's in line more with what everyone else in Guild is using.
yes.
There's Owlbear Rodeo as well as another one that some people use, which is totally free. And there's also now a VTT built into D&D Beyond, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Which people have been using. I know a couple of DMs have run games for that.
Well, so the selling point to me of that one, the reason it's made me go, oh, is because it links to your content you purchase, so you can just import the maps directly into it from the Official Adventures.
Yeah.
Which is a huge benefit. Right, because anyone's used Roll20 before, you import the map, you have to size it properly, you get the grids right to make sure it lines up so the tokens can move around properly, then draw all the lines on for dynamic lighting with dungeons and stuff like that, which is fine, that's all part of your preparation, basically. But yeah, the D&D Beyond one, especially if you're already paying for the subscription.
I think the D&D Beyond one, in comparison to Foundry and Roll20, seems limiting in its functionality that it can offer. It hasn't got super dynamic lighting and all the rest of it. But the reality is, unless you're pretty used to using that bit of software, like I don't use Roll20 enough, so when I started setting things up, I had to learn all of that. Mm-hmm. The reality is, the players ended up with a map. When I needed that map, they've not put on it because it's a combat. The rest of the time, they don't need a map up. I had like a splash screen, just put them back on the splash screen for the campaign whilst we were role playing and stuff.
I guess all those extras, bells and whistles, like dynamic lighting and whatever, they are a nice to have. But if you go back to the core of D&D, where a lot of games are still to this day played face to face, you don't have that. You put a map on the table and that's it. You don't get your dynamic lighting, you don't get the parts of the map that are obscured until you've actually discovered them. It's there in front of everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's not different to kind of the way that the game probably started.
Yeah. I think the only time I've seen it done really, really well with dynamic light, you run in Tomb of Horrors? Tomb of Horrors? Annihilation? Whatever it was. The classic one. Yeah. And you had the dynamic light, so we could only see we could actually see because the whole place is dark. And that changed the whole experience around how we moved around the map. Kind of thing. So I can see the benefit of it, but every time I try to set it up, I've ended up with people looking at a black screen and going, you know what, I'm just going to take it off and let this. So the D&D Beyond stuff, I think, works really well.
Yeah, I think dynamic lighting, I can see where sometimes it could be a benefit. I mean, I've run a game, not D&D, but I ran an alien RPG game, and so you were in a dark spaceship. And I think the way that was set up is that you only saw where your spotlight was pointing. So you could see in front of you, but then if you turned around, the bit that you were seeing is now black again.
Yeah.
So I think that can kind of add to the atmosphere because of the environment you're supposed to be in.
And also being someone who played in that game, the fear and the absolute terror of when you walk down a hallway and then you spotted something either ahead of you or in the room, you're like, I'm not moving. I'm not moving from here, I can see it.
It's one of the things that I think that was on Foundry, and one of the things that you could have on was the motion detector from the Alien game, so you could hear them. Oh, brilliant. Oh, well, another one then.
So it's about choosing the right tool for what you're trying to do. Really.
Yeah, but again, but even so, even then, that's a nice to have. I mean, I do like putting my nice things. I mean, as we've spoken about in previous episodes, one of the things that you get with my games is I would always have the sort of big fancy models that are painted, because that's me. I like to show off. So I would probably have that kind of thing if I can, but I don't think it necessarily makes a game. You could have all the most sort of atmospheric maps with all the right lighting and all the right sound effects, but actually if the game is being run by complete non-teams that don't know what they're doing and doesn't really engage the players,
Why do you think
it's not going to work. Virtually, you could have someone with a blank bit of paper with just grids on it, and if they are good at telling the story and getting you to sort of imagine what's going on, it'll be a fantastic experience.
I suppose that would be my next question is, if it was the bare minimum that you needed to kind of prep, what would you say are the very bare minimum things that you would need either online or in person to have as to help you and to help your players set the stage? And
Date and time to turn up.
okay. Yeah.
absolute bare minimum? Notepad?
Dice.
Not even, I don't think even dice.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, so when I run a monster, like for example, a few weeks back, you guys were fighting ice mephits and polar bears. I didn't roll any dice for damage.
You lied to us.
Just use the average damage.
Just use average
So you
damage.
need stat blocks, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but if you've got notepads, you can just make stat blocks up.
But what about the rolling to hit us, Ash?
Just make it up.
Well, there's plenty of role-playing games where there are no dice involved at all.
Yeah.
They tend to be less combat focused than
Yes, they
D&D is
do,
generally,
yeah.
doesn't it? I would say the minimum really you need whatever a rough plan of what you want to do, even if it's just a list of 5 bullet points as you're going to the adventure is A, B, C, D, E, unless you're really good at making it up on the fly, but I would recommend some prep on that front. Stat blocks, maybe some basic descriptions, and that's probably about it.
And how would you work to ensure that the session that you're running is player-centric? What tools do you engage?
Sorry, eccentric.
Player-centric.
Oh, sorry.
There you go, involving you as eccentric. It's about it's the structure of the session. So as a DM, you should set the scene and then stop talking. And I talk about this quite a lot with new DMs, is just stop talking. Because your players are going to sit there thinking, oh shit, someone's got to say something, shit, and someone going to say something? No, I'm going to say something, what do I say? They will fill the silence, just be quiet. Set the scene and be quiet. And then the players will do whatever they need to do, and then you react to what the players do or say, and that makes it player-centric. Otherwise, what happens is you basically railroad the players. This is the session, this is what's going on, this is around you, you need to go kill that monster, what do you do? Go kill that monster. Whereas if you say, well, this is where you are, and this is the polar bear that's in front of you, what do you do? Well, there's nothing saying you've got to go and kill it now, and then the players can choose to throw a stone at it, run away, kill it, attack it, befriend it, talk to it, feed it, and you respond to what the players do. So that's
And I don't think that doesn't necessarily change what your adventure layout that you prepped either, does it? Especially with something that's more like a classical dungeon. With, the way players behave in one room, the next room they walk into still has kind of whatever you prepared for them in there anyway. So unless obviously they are linked in some way, or there's some mechanic that changes what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't even derail what you've prepped for the adventure a lot of the time.
I mean, from my perspective, I think that there's an aspect, one thing that's critical for a DM to keep an eye on, and that is, I mean, we've always spoken about how some players are perhaps more apprehensive about playing, they've got some anxiety issues, whatever. And I think it will be very easy if you just sit back you could get 2 or 3 of the players who are dominating everything, and you might get a couple of players that are sitting there almost in silence. And I think as a DM, you need to be aware of that and actually make sure you then bring them into the game. So ask them directly to make a contribution, whether that's an action or a bit of dialogue or whatever it is. So you just want to make sure that everyone is included at all times, and the game isn't kind of overshadowed by strong personalities who are just completely overrunning the others.
Just to be fair, I think actually you do this really well, especially like on Tuesday night games. You make sure periodically you say, "And what's your character doing?" And you say that, everyone goes, "Oh, sorry, it's not our turn to talk," and that hubbub of background noise dies down a bit, and you bring someone forward to say, "Actually, I was just going to look in his chest," or whatever it is.
And it might be they've got nothing to contribute, but at least you get the opportunity to, which is what's important.
But also brings focus back as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because otherwise, if I'm playing in a game, I'm going to be looking. And it's important the DM says, "No, shake your face, Andy," and
That's the point, just by them saying, "And what are you doing?" to somebody else. Yeah. It's a sudden time to be quiet, gradual bit. Somebody else's go, isn't it?
you can use it to your advantage as well. Like on a Tuesday night, we have 6 players, and that's recently come down from 7, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there can be quite a bit of cross-table talk, which a lot of DMs don't like because it detracts from what else is going on. If that cross-table talk is happening, I will then engage one-on-one with another player and talk more quietly to them. I'll make a perception check for me. While they're talking, just make a perception check, and I'll give them tidbits of information, and then use that player to refocus the whole group, rather than the players having to sit there going, "Oh, Ash is talking again, we better be quiet." Now it's one of their fellow players who's got some important information for them. So again, going back to being player-centric, I'm now using players to refocus the group where they're getting a bit rowdy, I suppose, out of hand, hogging the spotlight, all those kinds of things. Using other people to refocus the game as well. I do it with Zeke quite a lot on a Tuesday night. Probably because he's sat closest to me. Can't remember who sits close. You sit close to the other side, don't you?
I'm close on the other side, yeah.
So I don't know if I've done it to you before as well, but yeah, so we do that sometimes too.
And how would you manage expectations when it comes to a game, both for you and for your players?
Certainly not to have any.
Session 0 is the most important session you will run in your campaign. That's where you set your expectations, and that's where your players set their expectations of you as a DM. So those hard and soft limits, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's going to happen if 2 players disagree. All those kinds of things.
Can you give some examples
Of
those different expectations and limits and what could possibly be set in a game for people who might not have done it before, things that they could discuss?
So session 0s, you might talk about player versus player, or PvP, what I often call it, how you're going to resolve that. So what you don't want, generally speaking, as a DM, is 2 players rolling attack rolls against each other, because no player should be able to kill another player. That's not their job, they should be working together. So how are you going to deal with that? Normally what I would say is during a post-skill check, we get the results and move on. And that keeps flow for the game as well. Hard and soft limits is an interesting one to handle, because you can, I should ideally set them before the session 0, but then make everyone aware of them on the session 0 without singling them.
Oh, the singularities!
Singling them out. I can't say that word.
Singling them out.
Singling them out. Why can't I say that word?
Got there.
So the way I approached that with mine was when I did the session 0 for my group, I went in with here's mine. These are things I won't tolerate. Do you guys want to add anything else to it now, or you can just drop us a message afterwards, and just kind of left it at that. That was enough.
Yeah.
Give them permission to speak to you basically and say I'm not comfortable with it.
So you can do it both kind of as an open forum and a one-on-one to give privacy for those people.
Absolutely.
I take a very, very simplified approach, and for me, I just want players to know this is a game, and we're playing it to have fun. Anything you do that detracts from us having fun is not acceptable. Period. That's it. So if you don't let me give you a character, then that's not having fun. That's not acceptable.
You learn over time as well, don't you? So like within the guild as a whole, if I've got a table of people that I know, we might not even do a session 0 because we know what the expectation is. But if we've got one new player, I'll go through the whole session 0.
You generally with the campaigns that we've run, the same group's been playing for 4 or 5 years on different campaigns. We still, as we start a new one, you recap the rules that do. You share the table rules and stuff. You just don't do a full. It takes us 5 minutes, not an hour.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, another example is I ran a one shot recently online, which was the Devil made you do it. It's named one shot, and that was Stuart, who's a regular, Zeke, who's a regular, Dave Freeman, who's a regular. Who the hell else was that? Wasn't he, was it?
No.
Whoever you are definitely memorable.
You are
Just having a
important.
mind blank.
And there was another new lady who joined us called Rebecca, and it was her first ever session with the charity. So we took a good 10 minutes going through the expectations of how things are going to work and setting that expectation ahead of time so we know how things continue. Let's go have a look. I don't know who that person was. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten who you are.
With that in mind, how do you kind of manage keeping control and being firm but fair when it comes to the game?
Stick.
The stick,
Get them.
I growl.
growling. These are all techniques that you can use in your own games. Sticks, growling. John, what do you like to use?
Everyone's favourites online or in person.
Yeah.
So find in person. If it's getting really off topic, if you just as a DM, you've been standing up, just sit down and people will look at you, and it's sometimes enough just to break it and allow you to bring everything back on track.
Or the other way around.
Or the other way around. You sit in, stand. Just saying, guys, that's enough. Like,
Yeah.
We're off topic. Come on, you're just wasting your own time. Come back.
That's
Tip the table, that's how it works.
What you just said there, John's really important because I think a lot of DMs don't feel empowered to do that. Because actually, there's nothing wrong with you saying, right, come on, guys, you chatted shit for the last half an hour, what are you doing?
Yeah. Let's do it.
And you
Right.
can say that, that's well, maybe not. But
That's exactly how we say it. Oh,
on a Tuesday night,
that's it.
absolutely, and actually, that's pretty tame behaviour, right? On a Tuesday night. But there's nothing stopping you doing that as a DM and being direct.
Yeah.
Sometimes being direct about it will get the result more quickly, and then go back to what Andy said, means you can get on with having fun.
Yeah.
I found, from a player's perspective, it's always very strong when the DM just starts rolling dice behind that screen.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a big old heavy dice, and all you hear is dong, and you're like, oh. It doesn't even necessarily have to be for anything, but you hear that enough times, you're like, you need to stop talking, we're gonna die.
I keep a metal dice just for that.
Yeah.
Just to run behind the screen occasionally.
At the very least, it tells you the DM's getting bored.
It's a very strong indicator.
But we spoke before about kind of knowing when to do that. I think was it a few sessions ago, one of these we were talking about like keeping an eye on your players and spotting when they get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the time to kind of kick in. Let's be honest, if everyone's still having fun and they're talking about stuff, but everyone's engaged in that conversation, why would you stop it?
Yeah.
Like, you can leave it to run for a bit, it's not a big problem.
Especially if you do a campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose with those instances, you have more time to let them run wild.
There's always
rather than
next
one
week.
shot.
Except for when there isn't, when you've got someone leaving. Or something like that. Then that's when you as a DM start using those pacing tools. Pacing this week? Did we do pacing already?
We've done pacing.
Okay, we've done pacing.
Listen to our other episode for pacing. Finally, under players, we've got rewarding appropriately and without favouritism. How do you reward your players when it comes to the games?
I don't kill them.
Okay.
Magic items is normally what people go to with this. And the way I do magic items, I don't know if it's different to everybody else. You'll never ask anybody else. If there's a chest that my players can find with a magic item in it, and let's say it's in our campaign, you guys find a chest, there's actually 3 options in that box, depending on who opens it.
Okay.
So the contents of the box will change. If Vesper opens it, you might find a magic weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if Adonis opens it, you might find a magic staff. Where if G opens it, he might find a magic dagger. I don't know, all different things depending on who opens it, and that makes you as a DM, not makes you as a DM, it stops you as a DM from favouring one person over another.
Mm-hmm.
Because if, for example, I put in that box a +3 short bow, which of the 3 of you uses a +3 short bow? G. So really, even if Adonis opens that box, G's got the magic item. Because no good to Adonis. So is that favouring Andy over you two in that situation? If I give the options.
You don't just always do it whoever opens the box though, do you? Because once you've given G one, for example, the next time, no matter, you know, if it's G that opens the box, he won't get something, it'll be one of our...
Yeah, exactly. It's about keeping it fair.
Having that table you can kind of tick off, I suppose, is the way you do it.
And that's exactly what I do. So I have a table, not in our current campaigns, works differently, but the Obsidian campaigns, for example, one of my handouts, I literally have a table with all the players and different magic items dependent on what level they're currently at as well. So you can keep the magic item going. Because a level 20 character does not need a +1 short sword.
You got the pencil.
But also I think sometimes people get hung up on thinking that the only reward that they can give is items as well, because a lot of the times it's forgotten that there is inspiration that's available to give, and it's nice when you get that in game for maybe problem solving. But then with a campaign, I think a reward that you could give is maybe information or a tidbit to do with that character. So rather than it being, you're getting a magical axe, if you find a note that has information relating to the goal that you've set out or your backstory or something. So just knowing that there are other ways to reward people, not just with gold and diamonds.
I always like in the campaigns when someone owes you a favour, and it's like, you know, oh, if you need any help in the future, you let me know, kind of thing. That's kind of a little blessing from somebody, not like a physical blessing, but just somebody else does something for you, was looking after your character or looking out for you or something like that. I always find that's a nice reward because it helps do the well-being part as well and tie people together.
I think that can vary depending on, again, whether we're playing a one-shot or a campaign. If it's a one-shot, you probably just...
You're
more likely to give them a few items.
Yeah.
Whether it's gold or few items or whatever. Whereas in the campaign, having that sort of, that promise from someone for help, a note, a clue as to something that they could take forward, some sort of acknowledgement of their recognition of their efforts, I think is definitely the sort of the way to go. Rather than, as you say, just here's a sword, here's a dagger, whatever it might be. Which is great to say for a one shot, not so much for a campaign.
Even gold in the one shot is quite unless you get the time to shop at the one shot episode, right? It's not much of a reward until I suppose at the end. Like you've got a big pot of gold at the end, the players can walk away going, oh, my character had spent blah 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 in it. Use that money to do something. But that's not going to happen in your game, that's just for them to take away from the game at the end, isn't it?
I think, and again, sometimes different players will take more from different rewards. There are players that actually get a real sense of achievement purely from solving a really well thought out, beautifully crafted puzzle. If you've gone through a time and effort of creating something to include in your game, and it's taken a bit of time, and they've had to be inventive and sort of crafty in providing a solution. Sometimes the sense of achievement they get from them can be brilliant. In itself, it can be a reward.
Absolutely, yeah. There's one other thing that happens in the charity as well, reward-wise, that doesn't happen elsewhere, which is that impact on the narrative of our world. When something cool happens, our players can see that having a wider impact, and that can be minor, like finding a shop in a town, all the way up to Harry's character becoming God. What to tell him later? Oh, but that's a massive reward, and being able to be a part of the world, I think, is huge. I think, Bertie, you've mentioned it before, like, realising that you know what they're talking about, or listening to the podcast and something coming up, like I mentioned the Brackenbridge family in our first session, and I know the Obsidian campaign members are going, oh yeah, and I know who they are.
Yeah.
That is a reward for them, isn't it? Because that's the reward for joining in with us and enjoying more. I always say the more you play with us, the more you'll notice these sorts of things, and that's, again, it's a form of reward.
Yeah, I mean, one of Lizzie's characters is a fun within...
Yeah, Meryl Sandler's race, yeah.
I'm not sure that necessarily we would classify it as a a reward, but it's certainly an acknowledgement that in one of the big games, some of our favourite characters who we've spoken about previously, Mouse and Florin, turned out to be NPCs that had been brought back but as an evil version of themselves to fight against the adventurers of the campaign.
Or the statue of us that is in a town somewhere that
Yeah.
I have yet to experience.
And I can go and pay homage to the burial site of my legs.
Mm-hmm. Even things down to like Mara.
Mara, yeah. I mean, it was a throwaway. I mean, I think we might have had this conversation about whether or not Mara was supposed to be developed into what she has as a character within the world. But yeah, a child that we find in a campaign, and all of a sudden she's now one of the, she's the head of a city.
She ruled her ocean.
Yeah. And woe betide anyone that tries to hurt her, because life will punch you down.
Impeachable.
Mm.
Okay, our next key for today is patience. So when it comes to patience, this I feel is very important, especially when it comes to new players, because they're people who come in and who might be quite anxious about playing, maybe a bit nervous because they're not sure of how the game goes. How do you manage that patience with players, like when it comes to establishing their skill level and their experience within the game?
So I DM for a few new players and some experienced players, and new players, they kind of go through a journey, I think, over that first session where they don't want to say much, then they suddenly kind of go, oh, I get how this works, and then they get a little bit overconfident, and then they kind of come back to a sensible level generally, is kind of how that flow goes. In terms of managing it, I think actually the more you encourage them to be part of the game and get involved with everybody else, for me it's more about expectation management, like making sure they're not trying to be alone, the character, they're part of the party, they're engaging with each other. Some of the things that you said, Ash, earlier about, giving them a tidbit to share with the party, and little bits and pieces like that, that helps manage those kind of problems of, I don't really know my character sheet, because if they're saying, well, I want to do something, and they're sat next to somebody sort of across the table, people either side can glance over and help out, especially at our games. I've never seen anyone go, oh, new player, I'm not helping you, it just doesn't happen. And I think as well, I know Ash, you're quite conscious sometimes about where you put new players at our events as well, aren't you, to make sure they are with people who are more keen to support and stuff like that. So it's never really been a problem. And seeing somebody go from, I don't really know what I'm doing, to, oh my god, this game's amazing. Like, there's a real joy in that, I think, as a DM, isn't there? Seeing that light bulb moment, they go, oh, I suddenly get this. It's cool.
It's about not rushing them as well. So one of the things I always say as part of the start of my session is make sure you know what your stuff does. If you're going to cast a spell, make sure you know what that spell does, because my expectation as DM is for you to know that spell or ability.
Like
looking at these to
Hunter's Mark, able to train,
like Hunter's Mark, able to rain, wings, all this kind of stuff. Because I'm not going to remember it. It's not my job. But then when you've got a new player, understanding that they take time to read that spell, and they may not understand it is really important. So if they cast Fireball for the first time, what you don't want to do is take over. It's like, okay, where are you putting it? If you put it here, you can hit the maximum number of people. Okay, I'll put it there. Great. So you hit these 8 things. They're going to take dexterity saving throws. Now, these failed it, so they're going to take 8d6 damage. But the others pass it, so they're going to take half that number. So you just get 8 dice and roll them together. There's no, learning as such for that player in that situation. Let them read the spell, talk through it with them if they need to, and then guide them through that spell's description. And the next time they cast Fireball, they're going to understand it and know what they need to do with it. So you're taking that time and not rushing and pushing through that situation.
So sort of guide them not to use it in a room that's 10 by 10 that they're standing in with the rest of the party, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
make sure they understand the consequences.
Yeah.
So where do you want to put it there? Okay. You're going to get everyone, including yourself, and you're going to burn the building down. It's that side of it going, do you want to put it there? Ooh, But yeah, it's giving them the autonomy to make that decision. Because they could go, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to blow all of us up. And they go, okay. I think it also comes to with not new players, especially now with the new rules coming in, because it's potentially even worse because you've got people who've been playing it for years and years and years and years. And you're like, okay, we're going to play by the new 2024 rules now. And then they go, but the spell does this. Not anymore. So it's that side of it as well.
I think things like reminding people the effect of their actions, that's not a new player issue either. Like that's senior players who've been playing for years, like you say, maybe they haven't played class before, haven't played a rule, that particular rule before. Maybe they're just not paying attention. You know, even with battle maps and TV tabletops and all the rest of it, it's not always clear elevations or terrain in the way, and they might misinterpret something. So you need, taking the time to make sure people understand what's happening. But I think it's also one of the things I ask my players to do is if you try on something, tell me what you want to happen.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to go and do a backflip off a building, tell me the reason, what you're trying to actually do with that. Oh, you're trying to backflip down to land on top of that moving car. Right, gotcha. I know what you're doing rather than just backflipping off into an alleyway.
Yeah. Not about patience as well, something I mentioned earlier, is that silence, that sort of silence as a DM. Have some patience, sit there and don't say anything, and when you feel like you want to say something, still don't. Wait another 20 seconds, 10 seconds even. So, although a lot of what we're spoken about patience is about players, you as a DM should also have the patience to sit and wait and let your players process what you've given them, so then feed off them to keep everything player-centric, like we've already said. That's the number one tip I give to DMs a lot of the time is be patient and don't feel like you have to fill the gaps. You set the stage, the players fill the gaps.
I think there is also a good way to use that skill, and Andy's done this, he might not be aware, but to instill absolute panic in the players. If you're not saying anything, like we had a little bit of an incident that we were trying to resolve where a woman was being sucked into a portal. There was some kind of gem involved, and we were trying to figure out what it was, and Andy was just like, silent. I figure it out. We're like, do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do this? And it's not answering that question as well. So just try it. Try it and see what happens. Because it's so easy to go, that won't work. Or, yeah, that worked. You could try that. Silence and then just forcing them into action is really powerful. It's nice.
I don't know if I'm perhaps taking it a bit too far. I think patience is a double-edged sword because we'll talk about being patient for the right reasons. But if a player demonstrates behaviours that are inappropriate, I don't think we should be patient and hope or wait for them to change that behaviour. I think the chances are they won't unless we address it. So I would suggest that when players step over a line, we act immediately. We don't show any patience with regard to that. We act.
Yeah. That's why that session 0 is important, isn't it? Because it gives you the backup then to say, but that's not acceptable. Yeah. This is the reason why. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've not come across that in any games I've been involved with, either in player or DM, but I think it's an important note or point to note.
There is also, I'll just say, to talk about the hard limits, but there is also things like when you get stuck in the rules discussion, isn't there? Having the patience to are we going to give it another 5 minutes to figure this out, or am I just going to say, no, that's enough and move on? Not talk about the hard limits, and it's not kind of on the positive side either, but it's about reading that table and going, okay, this isn't worth the delay, or this isn't worth, we want to get going.
I think sometimes it's understanding that it's maybe a bit of interpretation, because there are definitely some things in the books that when you read it, it's a little bit ambiguous as to what exactly it means. So it's taking the time to have that conversation and going, okay, what do you understand that to mean, and what are you trying to do with it, rather than just going, no, that's not going to happen, that's not possible, because you've got that rule of cool as well, which I think is really important to use in games sometimes. Is maybe the rules don't necessarily state that can happen, but if they've interpreted it in a certain way that means they think they can, it's just taking that time to go through it with them and going, right, convince me a little bit, and then going from there, just to keep
Yeah.
going with the pacing as well.
Yeah,
like you
it
said.
goes back to my point earlier. Look, we're there to play a game,
Mhm.
and it's to be had, for everyone to have fun. And if we have to sort of be a little bit flexible with some of the rules in order to, as long as it's in line with the theme of the story and everything that's going on around you, then yeah, let it go.
Let it go, let it go. Please cut this out, Ash.
You might just take all that like singing stuff and just make a singing episode.
Oh, yay.
I'm looking forward to the bloopers episode.
The bloopers episode, what the ones where I can't say sinking when they
Or the conversation about fish sandwiches that I.
Yes, go like that. Yeah, with a bit of ME in it.
Yes, a bit.
Oh no, I forgot about that.
It's not like it was the potpourri like a movie.
Okay, the final P that we have today, that is going to be our sixth P of the 6 P's, is purpose. So the main thing of this is that everything happens for a reason, and it's trying to instill in your players and for you as the DM that decisions that are made are going to have consequences. How do you recognise those decisions and the consequences that it has, both good and bad, and kind of just not justify them, but let them live instead of trying to kind of benefit them?
Never really had a problem with this in any of the games that I've run. I think when the only time I really have a problem with purpose is when if I'm writing a one shot, wrapping those extra couple of scenes that I might chuck away. The things that are kind of like that middle bit where you go, okay, if we run short on time, I can just ditch that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I find it difficult to give purpose to something the characters can interact with, knowing full well it can't be integral to whatever the story is.
Yeah.
That's the only time I really struggle with it. Typically, I tend to try and make those things something like about the environment or something like that, so it has a place in there in the adventure. It needs to be disposable at the same time, which is a bit tricky, I think.
Purpose is the hardest of the 6 P's, I think, to get right in the planning stages. So pacing is the hardest to do. I think purpose is the hardest to be consistent with, because purpose can relate to the story. So having encounters that build the narrative, either a player narrative for your background and backstory, or overall narrative for the campaign or adventure itself, meets purpose. Purpose could also be speed bump encounters, help you with a tool with pacing. That can be purpose, that's got a reason to be in the adventure. Where you lack purpose is where someone goes, I want to do this. Why are we doing that? Sounds cool. Well, sounds cool. Yeah, it is a purpose, but is that really helping in any way? Or are you going to do that fight and it's going to feel a bit weak and a bit empty? It's justification for why you're putting that in the adventure. And it might be, it's a really cool big model that I want to use. I like the way you nodded into the microphone.
Move forward to nod.
I think that's about purpose. That's absolutely fine. Though. You've got this big cool model. Other your players think that's a big cool model and go, oh, wow, look at that. We're fighting that. So it's part of the fun purpose, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. So, but you need to have justification in terms of. I think your question, Bertie, was about. What the actual question was?
It's about the good and the bad consequences of making them matter.
Yeah. So have the confidence with what you're doing. You just take it on the chin. If you put something in the adventure that you think has one purpose and turn it to have another purpose, and you didn't anticipate it, and it might change or derail something later on in that adventure, just take it, adapt with it, and don't be so fixed with your adventure that you can't deviate from that path. There's a fine line to tread in the planning stages, and make sure you've got enough to run your adventure, but not so much that you can't be flexible with it. And actually what I find as a DM is that when I have to be flexible, and I have to think on my toes and think on my feet, those are the sessions where afterwards my players go, I really enjoyed that. That was really cool.
I think it's also sometimes probably tricky for new DMs and old DMs is to consider what the possible ramifications of actions could be. It's very easy to go, well, if they solve this puzzle, then they're going to get through to the next bit and then they're going to get the gold. But going, okay, they didn't solve that puzzle. What's the consequence of that? It might be something smaller, it might be something bigger that happens down the line. And it's not, I don't think it's always easy to go, what is a reasonable consequence of that? And sometimes people don't want to commit, especially if it's a negative one. They feel like things should always be good for their characters.
I think there's, again, two aspects to this. Though we said, I think, how you said, like a campaign versus an adventure before. You said a similar thing. And I think that's true in that scenario that you're just given, because a puzzle that unlocks the next part of an adventure in a one-shot, you have to have a way around it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're an hour in, they can't solve the puzzle. What you can do, sit there for the next 2 hours and do nothing. It's just, you've got to have some alternative, some way around that. In something like a big campaign, you don't have to have a way around that big locked door puzzle. The characters will go off, talk to some of these things, figure some more stuff out. It can create a whole other set of adventures before they can come back and deal with whatever that was. I think the other thing in kind of a campaign setting is you've got more scope for, if they're nice to the shopkeeper, or, those little things that players do that have quite a wide impact around the NPCs they interact with regularly. I think you've got a lot more scope for that.
Well, I know it would take a lot more effort by the DM, but something that if I'm doing a campaign, something I'd like to do is almost like have two storylines running in parallel, but to get to the final outcome. And the idea will be that if they don't solve this puzzle, whilst it closes off that avenue, it opens up the opportunity to go down this path, which might give them a slightly different experience, and at a later point they can get back onto that path. So the consequence doesn't always necessarily mean a detrimental or bad impact on their game experience overall.
Consequence is a funny one as well, isn't it? Because so for example, there's a puzzle and they can't solve it. Oh, actually, no, that's a different example. You guys, I'm going to go back to your adventure where you're adventuring from town to Timberminster, and you get failed on those survival checks. So there's an immediate consequence that your adventure is taking longer, and as a DM, I can involve what your journey is taking longer. I can build that into the adventure there and then. But in between now and the next session or future sessions, I can look at how much extra time that was and plan a longer term consequence as well. So that you can build in this immediate, it took you longer to get there, and that means that you've missed this person who was in the town. Versus it took you longer to get there, meaning that 3 other towns disappeared.
No, it also meant I was able to perfect some of my snowboarding skills.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Ash, because that's something for me as a player that I'm really excited to see what comes about it. And I'm also interested to know whether you, as both players and as DMs, think it's good to inform your players when an action that they take has a consequence that might not know about yet. Just kind of say to them, okay, something's going to happen as a result of that, or whether you would keep it quiet and then drop the bomb on them later.
Depends on the consequence.
Okay.
If that consequence is going to negatively impact another member of their party, then I'll tell them about it before they take the action. If that consequence is not going to impact on the fun of the party or them as an individual, I won't tell them.
You're not always super specific about what the impact is, though.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
in our, again, sort of dealing with Zaphon and stuff in the Tuesday night campaign, it's like, look, this could have a really bad impact. Are you sure you want to do this? And if people still go ahead with it after they've done the action, it's like, okay, might be 2 or 3 sessions before we find out what the impact was. But you were told before you said yes, this could go real
One
bad.
example there, isn't there? Stuart has basically, well, not been possessed by Zaphon, but he has Zaphon in his head. And another character, Hazel's character, has got a twin sister, and Stuart was told, if you do this, I will go and hurt her twin sister. Did anyway. So now he's going to have to do the consequences of that, whenever that is. So in those situations, I gave him the consequence immediately. Obviously, I don't think it's going to impact on the fun of the campaign in this situation, because I'm absolutely going to do it. When's this episode released?
June.
June, yeah, will happen by the time he's listening to this. I'm not going to say what's going to happen because John's here.
But things like drawing the card, or
Oh,
whatever,
yes.
that card that you gave to Zeke, it was like, oh, if you rip this, I'll come and help you out. Knowing full well there's going to be a consequence to that. It's not a free thing he's going to do for no reason, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to ask for yet, kind of thing. So I think it depends on what you're trying to convey, I suppose, isn't it? Whether you tell people the full consequence or not.
Sometimes you can have fun with consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that. I've had a situation where they've had a puzzle and they've triggered something, and you've built up the tension, and they think, oh my God, what's happening? And you keep narrating it so that they think something's going to happen, and then at the end of it, nothing happens.
Well, it's Dorian, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Dorian.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a situation, though, where by informing the players that the action that they want to take could have a negative consequence, could influence them out of what they would have done in a way that it's not true to the narrative of their character and what they would have chosen?
That's the exact reason why I would normally only say if it's going to impact on another player. Because that way they can make the conscious decision of, if I do this, it's going to impact on Andy in this campaign. Do I want to impact Andy's gameplay through my decision?
Okay, so then expanding the question on that, the information that you give them, is it information that they would be able to figure out as being a result of the action, or is it above table, you're kind of letting them know?
So I think if it was going to result in significant harm or damage, or if it was going to massively impact on the fun of the game, it would just be above table. It would be straight up, if you do that, they could die.
Okay.
Because I think it has to be that direct if it's going to have that much of an impact. If it's a lesser impact, then I would justify it with maybe a skill check, which you have to be careful of, because then what if they fail the skill check? So justifying it with maybe passive skill checks is another way of doing it. So like we, in the last session, used passive perception, I think we did, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So passive perception, you can apply that to anything. You can say, what's your passive arcana? So it's just 10 plus your arcana. Okay, well your arcana is high enough that you understand this, and if you do this, this could be a consequence. So you can justify narratively for anything that's lower end, but if it's going to impact on the bigger game and the fun of other people, I think it just needs to be a straight up tell.
I think the other thing to add to that is probably, you talk about player agency earlier and players being in control. If they don't understand that there is a consequence, they don't necessarily need to understand the details of what the consequence is, but they need to understand that this could either go very well, very, very badly, and that gives them the agency then to make that choice, and it keeps it fun.
Right.
If you just say to them, I'm not letting you do that because it could hurt somebody, you've kind of taken away something they might want to do, or an interesting avenue that might open up the back of it.
Yeah.
So it gives them the agency. They do need to know. I think people need to know that it's a dodgy choice, because in the real world you absorb a lot of information that you don't just get necessarily.
It can also sort of inform their decisions, can't it? Because at the end of the day, you might have characters that are playing with perhaps a less than, holier than thou attitude to life, and actually if they know that the consequence is in line with what their character would do, knowing that it's in line, they might then take an action. So you're helping them to make a decision.
That's really interesting you say that, because I just had a complete brainwave there. We literally did this in the last campaign game that we played on this podcast.
Yeah.
When you said, Andy, that you want to go and slit that girl's throat, I looked at you and went, are you sure? And you went, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Because in that situation, my immediate concern is, well, if he does this, this could lead to some player versus player tension. So that's fine. That's the decision you made. And then you had a little bit of a discussion amongst the three of you. But obviously you three are all good players, so you know how to role play through that without it becoming completely derailing and obstructive. You're all experienced D&D players and all reasonable people. But someone who is perhaps less socially experienced or less experienced in D&D might not know that or know how to deal with that situation. So there's a guy I know who works in a shop in town. I'm not going to say what shop it is. It's not fair. A lovely guy. I've been trying to get him to come play with us for years, and he won't do it. And his reasoning is he can't tell when someone is role playing whether they are being themselves or their character, and it becomes too much for him. So if you've got someone in that situation and you have those two characters butting heads, a bit like Adonis and G did for a little bit there, that could be negative to someone who doesn't understand that.
Yeah, but I think John knows me well enough to know that
Absolutely.
I wouldn't actually go and slit someone's
You would
throat.
hope so. You would hope so.
I think that sort of stuff, though, just that situation talking about the dice and jig, that has opened up something else our characters
Yes.
can discuss in game and role play. You know, when we get into the city and there's a bunch of kids on the sidewalk, I'm going to position myself between G and the kids because I don't trust him around kids anymore. You know, silly little stuff that will come out just because of that decision. Whether it's important to the main plot, I don't know or not, but you know, I think it helps build character. It helps players have fun with it.
It shows as a DM as well that what might happen in one game, you might treat differently to what might happen in another. So understanding those limits of your players and knowing what those players can and cannot do, what they're capable of individually is really important. Because had that situation have happened in another game with 3 people who I didn't know how they'd interact, didn't know if they'd be able to deal with that situation, the conversation I might have had might have been, are you really sure you want to do that, Andy? Because there is a connection here between Adonis and John.
Yeah,
I'm saying, but obviously here,
as a player, I think I've got enough experience of the game to know that if this young girl had been in the story before and we'd had engagement with them and there was an obvious bond between the young girl and one of the players, then it would have had it would have influenced my decision. I probably wouldn't have done that. But because it was someone that literally, we have just found this person's laying motionless, none of us have had any engagement with her, we don't know what she's like, do it.
That's what I mean, you're an experienced player, you know how to deal with that situation, and I know that you know how to deal with that situation. But as a DM on another table with other people, you might handle that differently.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just being aware of, well, I guess it's part of all of the P's. It's that preparation of what you're going to be doing. It's setting those limits before the game, understanding the rules of it, knowing the experience levels of the players, and then just being able to adjust for the situations based on the people that you're playing with and the circumstance that you're in, because it's not always going to be, this is the way that you resolve that and this is how you should deal with it. It's just having that flexibility to go, these guys understand each other, they know each other well enough to be able to get on with it, or these are people who've never played with each other before, or I've never run for them before, not sure how they're going to respond to it, and therefore just be a little bit careful when it comes to that. Final kind of point of purpose that I think is something that we very much fall into with the Guild is the local and global effects that can be had as a result of actions taken. Are there any situations that you've come across where an action has been taken and you've considered circumventing it or changing it or not letting it have the impact that it might have had, or you just let things run to be true to that narrative as it's come to you? I'd love to put you on the spot, Ash.
Just trying to think, because we've done so much.
You're going to edit any of this silence out?
No, I'll leave it in.
There's been lots of examples. So when our first campaign edited, the Godslayer sword we gave off to one of the angels, didn't we? And then Zaphon ended up with that afterwards, whereas we had the options of destroying it or doing something else. Wasn't necessarily a direct kind of link, but something that happened in a campaign ended up coming back around for one of those big November narratives there. Kellen, one of the heads of the orders, player characters all over the place, isn't it now? And buildings, taverns, all sorts of stuff going on. In terms of the big narrative,
I don't think there's been anything that's made me kind of change anything from what's been planned too much. Added to it. So, for example, Targrin, had to add to it, because at that point I didn't know who was going to be God. That could literally have been anybody. This November, the World Anvil is huge, absolutely massive for the world. and is going to have enormous consequences. I can't plan for that because of the nature of the game and what's going to happen. Even the Acolyte, which is happening in September, that's going to have some big consequences too. Again, I can't plan for that because it's player-centric. We said before. You've actually run more of the 12-hour games than I have, Andy. I don't know if you've experienced it where something's happened to the players and you've had to adapt the narrative of what was planned in those big games.
I don't know I've necessarily had to adapt the narrative as such. I've had to adapt how I've approached certain scenarios, but I've managed to sort of keep the narrative going in line with what we want to achieve at the end of that 12-hour session. I think the instance was, I had this nice fight to set up and they turned everyone, used magic to turn everyone into Allosauruses that just munched through my entire sort of little squad of baddies. But no, I think I've always managed to. I mean, in the day, every game I've run within those 12-hour sessions has ended the way it should do.
But you saying that has reminded me actually of one time where it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, which is the Dulcari Uprising, where at the end we put those tables together and we had Armand versus Oladan. I thought someone was going to die. Those two main characters were going to die on every table. That didn't happen, did it?
Yeah, but we weren't aware that was what was the desired outcome.
No, and that's deliberate. So in that situation, I always try not to give the DMs what I want to happen with the furtherance of the narrative, because I want the players to have that agency and that impact on the world. So, for example, I told you what's happening in the world angle yet?
Not really.
Probably won't until you get the adventure, and then you can infer it however you think it should be read and taken. And in that way as well, the DM gets to put their own spin on it. So Andy's version of the game, different from Ruth's version of the game, different from Niall's version of the game. It adds your own flair to it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't sort of influence my players to take any particular action, whether or not it was kill Lady Eldan or what's his face. But they came to that decision on their own. And the fact that all three tables, or however many tables, came to the same decision that's
interesting.
That's
really interesting. Yeah.
You think about the consequences of what happened if one of them had died. Like if Armand had died, Onwings of God would never have happened. If Lady Oladan had died, Heart of Glass would never have happened. So the consequences are there, and I think it shows as well that we're genuine when we say our players really do decide the narrative, because I'm openly saying I expected one of them to die. Well, that would mean one of those two events would never have happened and would have been different.
But does it also not speak volumes about how our players are emotionally engaged with the world? And actually, maybe they just couldn't bring themselves to kill either of those characters because they saw them both as being important people within this world that we've been playing.
Yeah, quite possibly. Well, definitely. I know that when I talk to players.
I think that adventure would have ended very differently if you hadn't brought the tables together. Because if you're all the way through it, each of those tables was following one track or the other. When you suddenly bring them together, it's like, oh, hold on, shouldn't they think they're doing good as well?
Yeah.
So definitely through kind of the way you viewed that whole adventure at the end of it. What would you do, Ash, if there's one of those November games where it comes that's like a 50-50 split? Like you've got 6 tables, on 3 tables it ends one way, on the other 3 it ends like a completely different outcome. How would you deal with that sort of situation?
Generally, you would pick which one's coolest.
Yep.
Sounds the best, makes the best narrative and opens the most doors to the future. But if I still couldn't really decide, then it'd be the War Council get together and work out what the outcome should be.
Off the back of that, because you have been open about the fact that you have planned through and have things thought of for the next kind of 4 or 5 years, when it comes to that, is it top level kind of, these are the threads that we're going to follow? Because surely there's always the risk that things that happen in prior years could significantly impact that. So the stuff that you have set out, I imagine it's where you hope to be and it's the goal, but it's always flexible and open to change.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always top level stuff apart from the year that we're actually in right now. So this year is the World Anthem, and the War Council have already had like a little briefing video as well. I did it this year. I kind of recorded a presentation and sent it to them so they can refer back to it, and I include some key NPCs and some key areas you might see popping up.
Yeah.
But then if you're talking about 2026, which is Rise of the Ancients, I know what's going to happen, but I haven't gone into depth into that in case something this year changes that, and I need to bump Rise of the Ancients, change Rise of the Ancients, bin it, do something different because something cooler has come up.
Is that the
So
first
am I.
name drop? 26?
I was just about to say, if we just got a little tidbit name drop there.
Why not tell
I've
us?
not heard that one yet.
No, I haven't heard it, but I'm excited because it sounds like I'm going to be very
Some big minis. That's
It does. Yeah, I'm going to be popping blue pills all night long for that one.
They're Tic Tacs. They're Tic Tacs. They're Tic Tacs. They are the minty Tic Tacs.
I didn't go there until you mentioned it. Remember?
Talking peas.
They must have said Rise of the Ancients before that. Is that really the first time?
That's honest.
I'm using the presentation for the War Council, so you need to have got notices.
Sure.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I don't always listen when you talk, so you might have mentioned it. But it did, no, it peaked. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, on that time exclusive.
So my final question for you to round off our 6 P's as the guide for all of our budding and existing DMs out there is for each of you, what is your favourite thing about DMing? Take some time to think it over. Not too long.
It's the same for me. It's watching what the players do. So I think actually you said earlier about set the scene and then shut up. Seeing the players go through that thought process and come up with something that I never thought of, I think is brilliant.
Yeah. The contemplation from Andy, and that's just face right now. It looks like it hurts.
Yeah, I guess for me it's one, setting up enough jokes for me to tell them. 2, showing up in one. No, I get pleasure in making people happy. So, you know, and that's why, you know, that we shouldn't sound too stupid. That's why I tell a lot of jokes, because I like to make people laugh. So if I can see people's faces, if I can see the smiles and get them to think hard about puzzles and, you know, throw their hands up in exasperation because of a stupid thing that I've done, then yeah, that's great. At the end of the day, as I said earlier in this session, for me, it's a game and it's about having fun. And if I can get people to have fun for 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it might be, or 12 if we're having one of the big games, then job done for me.
I think about DM. The unexpected. You never really know what you're going to get when you sit down at that table. You can plan as much as you like, but that plan is going to go out the window at some point during your adventure. Something's going to happen you didn't see coming, and you've got to think of your feet. And it's in those moments I think you make the best memories around the table.
Well, we will bring our community episode to a close. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for our continuing adventure.
Well, we see how many more children Ginny will kill.
Oh, God.
Are you sure?
And that's this week's episode concluded. It's time to thank our Patreon members. Our Ruby membership, Joshua, Alberta, Paul, Dave R, Claire, Laura, Jason.
Emerald membership, Stuart. Sapphire membership, Becca M, Gary, Neil.
Diamond Geezers, Zeke, Lizzie, Chris, Martin, John, Bertie and Ash.
And of course our Obsidian members, Ant, James, Becca GS, Ethan, Niall, Dave F, and finally our 2 ruling council members, Chris and Sophia. Thank you so much all of you for your support and for helping us do what we do.